Hello. In part 1 of my weight loss videos, I explained how the National Dietary Guidelines advised us to eat large percentages of carbohydrate in our diet, and how by doing so we increased insulin levels in the blood. And insulin caused weight gain by stimulating fat storage and by preventing the use of stored fat for energy, because it wants the body to use sugar before it uses fat. So if you cut down on carbohydrate and therefore keep insulin levels low, you'll find it much easier to lose weight. While all that is true, the full story is more complicated. There are other factors involved, and there are other changes to our diets that were brought in with those National Dietary Guidelines. The recommendation was to greatly reduce fat intake, but they also recommended reductions in saturated fat in particular, and suggested it should be replaced with monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. There is no evidence that saturated fat is bad for us. It was proposed, it became dogma, and it's been repeated so often that people think it must be true. We used to eat and cook with butter and lard and beef dripping, natural sources of fat that we had used for centuries. The experts came along and said these were bad for us and we should replace them with vegetable oils. They call them vegetable oils, but you can't get oil out of a vegetable. I think they call them vegetable oils because we all think vegetables are healthy, and therefore if we call the oils vegetable oils, they'll think those are healthy too. In reality, they are highly processed oils from seeds, so they're better called seed oils, and they come from things like rapeseed, sunflower seed, safflower seed. Humans have never eaten these oils until around about 1911, when the process of extraction was developed. And there is a serious problem with them. Our diets need to contain certain polyunsaturated acids called omega-6 and omega-3. Our bodies can't make those molecules, and therefore they're called essential fatty acids because we have to eat them in our diet. Omega-3s have a variety of functions, including making up about 10% of our brain structure, and they also have anti-inflammatory properties. Omega-6 fatty acids have pro-inflammatory properties. They can increase inflammation. This can be an important factor in the immune system. If, for instance, you cut your finger and the wound becomes infected, the whole finger can become hot, red and swollen. There are many processes going on which we call inflammation. The processes are fighting the infection, they're preventing it from spreading beyond the finger, and they're accelerating healing. All good things. But inflammation can cause severe damage if it becomes chronic and systemic inflammation, in other words, long-lasting and throughout the entire body. During our evolution, we consumed omega-3s and omega-6 fatty acids in balance, in a ratio of about 1:1. That's before we consumed seed oils, and they contain vastly more omega-6 than omega-3. And here's a visual of that. This shows a range of dietary fats and the constituents of those fats as a percentage. The red bars are saturated fat, yellow bars are monounsaturated fat, brown bars are omega-3 polyunsaturated fats, and blue bars are polyunsaturated omega-6. The first thing to notice is that they all contain an amount of each type of fat, although they vary a great deal in their makeup. There are no dietary fats that are pure saturated fat or pure unsaturated fat. However, the newfangled seed oils have vastly more omega-6 than omega-3. Sunflower oil, for instance, fourth one down the list, has 70 times more omega-6. Corn oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil all contain more than 50% omega-6, completely dwarfing the omega-3. Compare them to the four at the bottom, lard, palm oil, butter and coconut oil. They still have more omega-6 than 3, but the total content of omega-6 isn't a problem. The National Dietary Guidelines thought saturated fat was bad. Therefore, we had to replace it with polyunsaturated fat, with no thought for the possible consequences of this decision. All restaurants and fish and chip shops and takeaways are required to fry food in seed oils instead of the dripping or lard that they used to use. Processed food manufacturers replaced traditional fats with seed oils in all their products. Families were encouraged to cook with seed oils. And now, the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 in our diets has gone from the evolutionary 1:1 up to 1:16 or even 1:20. It's completely out of balance. We have no evolutionary mechanism to cope with this tsunami of inflammatory chemicals, and it is causing metabolic dysfunction and dysregulation. Seed oils are the culprit in many diseases, but this video is supposed to be about weight loss. Yes, and the evidence for high levels of omega-6 and obesity is growing. This is one of many published studies. An increase in the omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratio increases the risk for obesity. It was published in March 2016, but nothing's been done about it. I've taken a few sentences from the abstract to highlight the conclusions of this study. Studies clearly show an increase in the risk of obesity as the level of omega-6 fatty acids and the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio increase. Recent studies in humans show that in addition to absolute amounts of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acid intake, the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio plays an important role in increasing the development of obesity. A balanced omega-6 omega-3 ratio is important for health and in the prevention and management of obesity. Another study involved very young children. Early infant adipose deposition is positively associated with the omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratio in human milk independent of maternal BMI, body mass index. So this means that in very young children the amount of adipose or fat tissue they deposit is associated and increased with increasing omega-6 to omega-3 in the milk that their mothers give them. Breast milk is by far the best thing for feeding young babies, but how good it is depends very, very much on the mother's diet. And if the mother's diet has a lot of omega-6 in it, so will the breast milk, and then so will the baby, and the baby will become fatter. It's a complex process, but the bottom line is the imbalance of omega-3s and omega-6s in seed oils is playing havoc with our metabolic pathways, and one of the consequences is increased obesity. The irrational fear of saturated fat made the government, the NHS and the experts believe we should drastically reduce the intake of fat and replace it with carbohydrate and polyunsaturated fat, without any investigation of the consequences. This monomania is so typical in health authorities when they decide they need to act on one thing and don't work out what will happen when they do so. And then when millions of people become overweight and obese after following their recommendations, they all say, you need to eat less and move more. I really don't like that. It's like blaming the victim. Eat less and move more insinuates that you are overweight because you are greedy and lazy. You need to eat less because you're greedy. You need to move more because you're lazy. It's an appalling thing to say. They are blaming us for the mistakes they made, and there was plenty of evidence that they were wrong before they made their decisions. There is a product called Weight On. This is a typical advert for Weight On. It was heavily advertised during the 1940s, 50s and 60s. Don't be skinny. It was after the Second World War and there'd been food rationing and there were a lot of very thin people around. And the Weight On company did very well out of promising that they could make you add pounds that would make you look better. It was directed very much at women to add those appealing female curves. I'm sure those adverts wouldn't be allowed now, but anyway, this one says, look better by adding desired pounds this easy way. It says gains of 5, 10 or even 15 pounds or more are reported by taking Weight On. the bottom left, it says satisfaction guaranteed. Satisfaction from first trial or return to store for purchase price refund. In other words, they are giving you a money back guarantee that by taking weight on, you will gain weight, and significant weight. So, what's in weight on? Each 30 ml of weight on emulsion contains the following active ingredients: maize oil, glucose, and then the rest of them are all vitamins, but the two main ingredients are maize oil and glucose. Maize oil is another name for corn oil, and we've already seen that corn oil is 57% omega-6 fatty acids. So years before the National Dietary Guidelines recommended a diet high in carbohydrate, which all digests down to glucose, and the use of vegetable oils instead of traditional fats, there was a company guaranteeing you'd put weight on if you ate like that. So to lose weight, we need to keep insulin levels low by restricting carbohydrate, especially sugar, and especially liquid sugar. We need to stop using seed oils at home. We need to be wary of fried food in restaurants and fish and chip shops and takeaways. And last but not least, we need to stop eating processed, pre-made food. Food manufacturers put loads of cheap seed oils into almost everything. Cakes, crisps, biscuits, even bread. Check the labels. That stuff's everywhere. To be healthy, we need to cook and eat our own real food. Food that comes from a farmer or a fisherman, not from a factory. There's still a little bit more to say about weight, and I will do so in Weight Loss Part 3. If you found this interesting or useful, please subscribe to the channel, and if you know anybody struggling with their weight, please share these videos with them. I look forward to speaking to you again soon, and in the meantime, I wish you good health.